Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time around we watched the middle 4 episodes of the War Games, episodes 5 through 8. What happened on those?
The main thing is that we were given information on this new set of people called the Time Lords.
Yes.
The first confirmation in 6 seasons that there is actually a group called the Time Lords. Although we don't know what they do, we're not sure if we've met them yet. We do know the War
Chief.
And the Warlord.
No, just the War Chief.
Just the War Chief.
He's the only Time Lord.
All right, that's right. The Warlord is one of the guys with the glasses who appear to be training all of these Earth warriors for some nefarious plot to take over the galaxy, universe, who knows.
Yes. So that was the whole purpose, was that the War Chief went to these aliens so that they could conquer the universe. And they're getting humans because they deem them to be the most vicious species. And the War Chief is thinking, well, once they have that all good, I'll take over, and then I will rule over all of existence, basically. And he offers basically his right hand to the Doctor, but obviously the Doctor is not really going to take it. Yeah. So, and then where last we left, the Doctor, he is having to do things under duress, though. He basically brought in the leaders of the Resistance into a trap, basically. That's where we last left them. So, but yes, the first confirmation of the Time Lords, and that the Doctor is a Time Lord, specifically. So, now, are we going to get more of that? I mean, obviously, I feel like we're going to get some more of that, but are we going to dive in super deep into the Time Lords? Maybe probably not. Just get some stuff here. Today, we're watching the last 2 episodes, so this may or may not be a shorter video than last time. I believe... I was going to look up how long the last video was.
Over an hour, I think.
Yeah. I can barely see that from here. 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 55 seconds. So, it was a very, very long video. Probably one of the longest we've done, but I don't imagine this will be the case.
No.
Although, at the end, we will have a sort of retrospective on the Second Doctor's era, because, like we've said for the past 2 weeks, yes, we do know this is the end for the Second Doctor. And this will pretty much be the last time that we know definitively when it ends. So, yeah. Any thoughts going into, any predictions?
No. I will say, we discussed this last week, that we think that this is probably one of the least padded, probably one of the best written, long event series. We've had some other, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 parters that were excessively overly padded, but this one seems to be very taut. The 2 writers seem to know exactly what they wanted to do with it, and the direction. We've had a little quibble about the accents, but that's minor. I mean, that's just from a couple of guys here in the middle of the United States talking about that. But other than that, we've been having good fun with it, and having some great discussions.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty much not a moment of padding. Like, you're completely invested through and through, which, I mean, that can be difficult for a 4-parter. And this is 10. Yeah. So, very, very impressive ending episode for the Second Doctor. So, I guess we might as well just jump right into the last 2 episodes of the War Games. Here we go.
He has proved his loyalty by helping us, and he has great knowledge of time travel mechanics.
You should wonder if that emblem that he's wearing is part of the Time Lords.
Maybe.
In my day, these things were impossible to achieve without shortening the life of the time control units.
There have been many advances made in space-time technology.
Yes, there must have been.
I didn't even think about that he's further along with the Time Lords.
Take him to the processing room.
I've worn glasses like that on stage before. They're very difficult to see through.
You will inform me immediately if there's any change in the situation.
Again, the acting is very good, not the screaming, yelling stuff that we've seen with some of these people who are the antagonists. These guys are all very subtle.
Well, they don't know how to sit down on a chair properly, but...
Process us again.
I don't trust you.
The feeling is mutual.
He sounds almost robotic.
No.
What is your name?
Hey?
Your name?
James Robert McCrimmon.
Do you know where you are?
You
You are in my castle. I am the McCrimmon of McCrimmon, your hereditary chieftain.
Yes, of course. You're the chieftain.
If you can successfully process characters like these, you will have made an immense contribution.
Thank you. Bring the girl.
Oh, leave me alone!
So that's really fooling him?
Do as you're told. Arrest him!
You are no longer in command.
I will take over as Supreme Galactic Ruler. You can help me rule,
Oh, it's just like Avatar.
if you will.
Shoot them both.
It would be hilarious if they shot the war chief and then he regenerated.
I told you! My gun's best!
You weren't even aimed at them. Oof.
Oh, that's got to be painful.
It's a real good
all right.
drag out of his
It's a
death.
personal debt I had to settle.
Does that mean you can't do as you promised and get us all home?
Oh, well, yes, I
You
can
can't.
still do that.
You can't unless... Doctor, you mustn't call them in or it will be the end of us. They'll show no mercy.
You stop the fighting!
Do as you're told!
Call in the Time Lords to fix it.
Yeah, the rest of them.
The Time Lords.
Who are they?
They're my own people, Jamie.
Oh, well, that's all right then.
But it isn't all right, is it, Doctor?
No, it's not, Zoe. But I'm afraid there's no alternative.
I mean, he did run away for a reason. Alright, go fish.
Look at that.
That is magic.
Doctor, you all right?
Yes, I am, all right.
Doctor, what's that?
It's a box, Jamie.
I know, I can see that.
It's a very special sort of box. It now contains all the information about what's been going on here, and an appeal for help.
Help? Who from?
Time
Oh.
Lords?
I remember in The Doctor's Wife, the whole thing was that the Doctor was sent one of those boxes.
He wanted to stop the war games! Kill him!
You're right. Will he regenerate? He should.
I mean, I still don't think they've figured out regenerations yet.
Don't worry. When the Time Lords get him, you'll wish you had killed him. They're coming.
And they're really hyping up the Time Lords.
Oh no, the slow motion run.
Oh no. It's the TVA. Well, that is a terrifying ending.
I was going to say, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, that's... You know, okay, I knew... we've seen, you know, like some Pertwee episodes where, you know, the Doctor and the Time Lords, they're not on the greatest of terms, but that's terrifying. He is running away as fast as he can. But, I mean, I guess... Because, see, with nothing else prior to this of, you know, who the Time Lords are or anything, we just know they are his people. But the only other thing we have was from, I think, just a couple episodes ago when the Doctor said, I ran away for a reason. And it's the same, you know, he ran away, the war chief got away as well. So, it does kind of make sense that, yeah, you don't want the Time Lords to be here. So,
And now, did the monk ever say that he had specifically run away, or did he just appear and kind of give us the first glimpse of the backstory?
I don't fully remember. I think he just... I mean, because they never really said. The most we got for him was just that he was from further along in the timeline, basically, from the Doctor. So I don't think it was anything that he ran away, but it would make sense, especially with all of his meddling in time, that he would have gotten away from the Time Lords as well. But yeah, this is a very ominous ending going into the last episode. And honestly, it does make sense now to... Yeah, I was a bit skeptical at first going 4 episodes, 2 episodes, but these last 2 are definitely different. Yeah. So, though this one definitely finishes up the actual war games and the security chief and the war chief and everything.
Kind of surprised they didn't put Carstairs back with Lady Jennifer. Now, he said, I'd like to find her, but they didn't get a shot of them together there at the end.
Yeah, so the Time Lords were just too fast, apparently. So, and yes, there is also the whole thing of, oh, the war chief is dead. But if he's a Time Lord, by that logic, he should be able to regenerate, you know. I suppose there's a chance maybe they could say, you know, retcon it later, oh, he was on his last life or something, but I'm pretty sure even now they still haven't figured out regeneration yet. It's just that the Doctor has changed his face. So yeah, I mean, it's very strange because honestly, the War Games is over. Like, that entire story is over. We still have one more episode just of something else.
Yeah.
Just an epilogue, basically. Here's a question. When was the last time we were in the TARDIS? It might have been the entire season.
Sputter like an old car that...
They're your own people, aren't they, Doctor?
Yes, that's right. Oh, why did you run away from them in the first place? I was bored.
What do you mean you were bored?
Well, the Time Lords are an immensely civilized race. Well, what's wrong in all that? Well, we hardly ever use our great powers. We can simply to observe and gather knowledge.
And that wasn't enough for you?
No, of course not. With a whole galaxy to explore, I've set controls to take us to our planet on the outermost fringes of the galaxy. Oh, in that case, we'll probably end up right in our lap.
Can't be landing already.
Well, that is impossible.
I mean, you tried to go somewhere specific. When has the TARDIS ever let you do that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Fury from the Deep.
They're definitely reusing that shot. Well, are they? Or is this... No, that's the old shot.
Now, just a moment. What's going on around here? Jamie, do as he says.
Well, he's got the robes of a Time Lord.
The Time Lords holding a trial is a very rare event.
Why?
Well, normally they don't interfere with the affairs of other planets, but they had to when I called for help.
Well, look, can't we get away?
You must speak in your defense.
Trial cannot proceed unless you do.
You must speak.
Can't you see he's just playing for time?
Very well.
I've never been so terrified of an episode from the 60s.
Kind of hints of the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah.
Yes.
These poor guys, they're just temps doing their job.
Look, the TARDIS is no good to you. You can't even steer it properly.
I'm done for rubbish. Of course he can steer it now. Into the machine.
And they were just messing with it, so wonder what happens.
Get after them! Kill them quickly! Kill them!
A force field has been placed around you, and around your planet, so that your warlike people will remain prisoners forever.
Oh, jeez.
No. No! No!
Well, that's put an end to them. Well, we'll be on our way. Come on, Doctor. Cheerio. Oh!
You know how Thanos needed 6 stones to do that?
Jamie, they are not going to let us go. While you have been content merely to observe the evil in the galaxy, I have been fighting against it.
It is not we who are on trial here, Doctor. It is you.
No, of course you're above criticism, aren't you?
Do you admit that these actions were justified?
Yes, of course I do. Give me a thought channel and I'll show you some of the evils I've been fighting against. The Quarks.
That's what you're starting with?
Deadly robot servants of the cruel Dominators. They tried to enslave a peace-loving race. Then there were the Yeti. More
Start with the
robot
least.
killers.
Yeah.
Instruments of an
Save the
alien
best for
intelligence
last.
trying to take over the... But worst of all were the Daleks. A pitiless race of conquerors exterminating all who came up against them. All these evils I have fought, while you have done nothing but observe. True, I am guilty of interference. Just as you are guilty of failing to use your great powers to help those in need.
You have become attached to him.
Oh, we've been through a lot, you know.
Please let us see him.
Come with me.
It's the one nice Time Lord.
There's where it is.
Oh. How are you supposed to get around this place?
There is no escape, Doctor.
I won't forget you, you know. I won't forget you. Don't go blundering into too much trouble, will you? You're a fine one to talk.
Will we ever meet again?
Again? Zoe, you and I know time is relative, isn't it? They'll forget me, won't they?
Not entirely. They'll be returned to a moment in time just before they went away from you. They will remember their first adventure with you, but nothing more. But come along. Your fate has been decided.
Oh, this sucks.
Are you sure you're all right?
Oh, yes. I thought I'd forgotten something important, but it's nothing.
All right, come along then.
All right, I'm coming.
Man, think of the kids watching this in 1969. They're terrified, they're crying everywhere.
What about Jamie?
He just dies immediately. I wonder if they used a bit of that footage in Jamie's first episode, because that was a recon episode.
Will be sent to Earth in the 20th century, and will remain there for as long as we deem proper. And for that period, the secret of the TARDIS will be taken from you.
And you can't condemn me to exile on one primitive planet in 1 century in time?
That defeats the entire purpose of our show.
I'm known on the Earth.
Your appearance has changed before, it will change again, and that is part of the sentence.
You can't just change what I look like without consulting me!
You will have an opportunity to choose your appearance.
Oh, well, that's not so bad. But I warn you, I'm very particular.
Here is your first choice.
Oh, he's too old.
Leonardo da Vinci.
But he's too fat, isn't he? Is this the best you can do? I've never seen such an incredible bunch.
Since you refuse to take the decision will be taken for you.
No, I never said that. but I'm a great deal of importance to... what's happening? Stop! You're making me giddy. No! You can't do this to me! No! 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 No!
Interesting that they didn't introduce Pertwee.
Yeah, there is no on-screen transition between the two of them. Which nowadays makes makes theories more possible to slip another doctor in between the two of them. So, alrighty. That is the end of the War Games.
Wow.
That was terrifying.
But, I mean, you have to understand, they said, we understand your position. We agree with you. There is evil that needs to be fought. But because you were doing this before you were given permission to do it, you will be exiled for a time. Notice they didn't say forever. They said until we deem it necessary to or allowable to let you do this again, we'll put you on Earth in the 20th century. Which, of course, makes perfect sense when you're in 1969, 1970.
Yeah.
So, I mean, seriously, these two guys, I don't know if there are, science fiction awards for writing in the late 60s like this, but this entire series would have been eligible, in my opinion, for that. Just very, very, very well done.
Well, and I know the first writer, Terrence Dix, I think he's going to stick around, too, because I remember someone said, I think earlier in this serial, they brought up the sonic screwdriver again. And apparently he wanted to keep bringing it back, but, other writers, they didn't care for it or whatever. So he, apparently on this one, he finally became script editor or, main writer or something. So he just kept putting it in and kept bringing it back with the third Doctor as well. So, I mean, if we're getting more of him for the writing, that's pretty good.
And I want to say that he's also a science fiction writer of novels and things like that. The name is very familiar. I'll have to look him up.
Okay. Well
done.
Yeah. Definitely a very solid end for the second Doctor. And also a very ominous one. I mean, I know we had, when we went through the 10th Planet and the Power of the Daleks, which we'll have to bring up again once we, give our thoughts on all the episodes again. But, originally we didn't like that, when you get this new Doctor, you get basically nothing. He has to keep everything within himself because of the situation he immediately jumps into. And especially at the end of the 10th Planet, where there's not the greatest send-off to William Hartnell. It's like, okay, he's old, and then he just starts, and then he just goes, regenerates. Start of the next episode, you don't get any explanation. You just get this new guy who's not really doing much, and then you move on. So it is still strange that it's not any sort of I don't even know how to phrase it necessarily, but I mean and I guess I know I'm judging this on the modern regenerations where pretty much every Doctor, even Eccleston, who only got a total of 13 episodes, they get some sort of emotional send off. Then lights start shooting out of their head, and then they regenerate. Whereas this one, yes, while still a far better send off than I feel the 10th Planet was for the first Doctor, it was still different. That it's not, well, this Doctor's time is done. We move on. Because even in that, it's the first Doctor is old. His body is worn out, which he even kind of said that it's like, oh, this old body of mine. And that happens. Whereas this one, it wasn't until that last scene that he realized they were going to force him to regenerate. Yeah. And it's a forced regeneration, too. Yeah. Which, I remember a lot of people have said, there's kind of a thing in modern Doctor Who where regeneration, it's death and regeneration. But while, yes, it's still the core same person, that specific Doctor is gone, and it's just sort of a death and rebirth. So if anything, it's not just that this is an exile of the Doctor, but an execution of the second Doctor specifically. Yeah. For a more morbid look at these last two episodes. So.
Which is very well done. I mean, very poignant. Yeah. The fact that they returned Zoe and Jamie to the point where they were first taken. Yeah. Jamie didn't seem to think that there was anything different. Zoe looked around and went, something's wrong here. Yeah. But she said, I just saw Jamie and the Doctor off. So
yeah, they said that they'll only remember the first adventure that they had. So Jamie still remembers the Doctor and Ben and Polly being there, but instead of leaving with them, he's just still in Scotland basically.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and again, it is one of those things where it's like I'm glad we did sort of save these last 2 episodes for their own video, because they are very different, I mean, even this episode, it's still the War Games, and we do also get the Warlord in this episode, but at the same time, it's pretty much its own story. So it's just a very fascinating episode. Yeah. So and it's also interesting because obviously, yes, everything they say of you'll be exiled on Earth, you can't use your TARDIS, we'll change your face, that's all setting up we lost our budget, we can't do these grand space adventures anymore, we're going to put it on Earth, monster of the week, very simple settings and stuff. But the way they work that in does make sense, especially with the trial of the Doctor and everything. And even then, because this was so good, and the main writer, Terrence Dicks, he is going to continue on, it does sort of make me excited for the third Doctor. It's like, okay, well, it's going to be very different from the last 6 seasons, but I'm curious to see what it's going to be.
Now, we know that the third Doctor will essentially be part of UNIT, or working with UNIT.
Yeah.
Now, since he already knows Lethbridge Stewart, when he regenerates, is he going to recognize Lethbridge Stewart immediately, or is he going to take an episode or 2 to say, hey, wait a minute, I've met you before, and I'm the Doctor from the Yeti in the underground tunnels and all that?
I would imagine that there might be at least the first episode of the next serial will be sort of the Doctor trying to figure himself out, make sure he's all right in the head, which we didn't fully have that from the transition from 1 to 2. He pretty much, while he was still figuring himself out, which was difficult in that moment, he still remembered, yes, I'm the Doctor, I'm you're Ben and Polly, I remember this stuff. So it may be, what I could honestly imagine is maybe top of next episode, he's dropped off on Earth. Somehow, that gets UNIT's attention. They go and they say, well, we're not sure who you are, but the Brigadier, he recognizes the TARDIS maybe, and thinks, could this possibly be the Doctor? And then the Doctor starts to recognize him, maybe, and then that sort of leads in, and he's like, well, I'm not really sure what else to do. I'm stuck here on Earth. I guess I'll just stay with UNIT. So it could be something like that.
I guess we'll see next week.
We will, yeah. So yeah. Well, hopping into the notes on this one. So the first thing I wrote down was the limited lifespan of the War Chief's Sidrats, or TARDISes, basically, which was interesting. I guess that's the first time... Well, I was going to say it's the first time they really alluded to TARDISes being living beings, but they did sort of establish that. They did that all the way back in season 1, I remember. That was, I think, the 3rd episode, which was another 2-parter, where they basically, like, something was going wrong and the TARDIS was trying to warn them. They figured out, oh, the TARDIS is alive. So, now, and it's also interesting, because they say, well, the War Chief wants the Doctor's TARDIS because then it's so much better than his TARDIS is, so he can go anywhere, he can, deploy troops from within the TARDIS. But the Doctor never mentions to him the slight problem of you cannot control it.
Yeah.
It goes wherever it feels like.
I thought Jamie said something, though, about...
He said that later to the Warlord.
Okay.
So, he said that when the Warlord took them onto the TARDIS, he said, oh, well, he can't steer it, Which, of course, now... So we've had that for 6 seasons of the Doctor cannot control the TARDIS. And now we're going to be stuck on Earth. And I do finally remember that in the 3 Doctors, which, if you remember, was the start of season 10, they finally give him the knowledge and fix the TARDIS. He can go wherever he wants again. And basically, the end of the 3 Doctors is the end of the Doctor's exile. So, that's 10 years before the Doctor can just go somewhere. it's insane that it took that long for that to happen.
Off to Brighton.
Yeah.
Spend a couple of days on the beach.
Yeah.
Have a good time.
Let's see. We did have the processor, which that was clever. Just act like you've been processed, basically. Which, of course, starting on Jamie, having Jamie play along with an act, I feel like is difficult. But he figured it out. He was better than VR. Yeah. So there was that. We had a bit of an alliance, more of an alliance of convenience between the Doctor and the War Chief. I do find it interesting that they don't just, with the Master, he's not just the War Chief come back to life, basically. I mean, I guess, yes, we did have in the last episode that he is, dead, basically. It's like, I'll just remove his carcass and stuff. But they could have, easily written around that maybe it just took a little while. Eventually he did regenerate. That's how you introduce a proper regeneration.
Yeah. Now, when, what was it, Seven, who was shot?
Yes.
It took quite a while for him to regenerate.
That's true. Yeah, because it took a little while. He ended up going to the hospital. I remember there was also a line where, the anesthesia he was also given almost stopped the regeneration, but it still took a while for him to finally do that.
In this case, whatever the sonic weapon that they used to kill him might have slowed down the process, and then once that effect wore off, then he could regenerate and possibly come back something later on. Yeah. But again, boy, that's certainly the template for the Master. I mean, the whole look and I mean, almost down to the clothing. If I recall, that almost Nehru jacket type thing is something that Delgado wore later on.
Yeah, so I would imagine, and especially if, Terrence Dixie creates the War Chief in this, he's probably, because I think that's the top of season 8 when they bring in the Master. That could have easily just been either we could try to bring him back as the War Chief, or we could, try to make a new character as the Master, but then it's like, well, how should he look? Well, let's just go based on that look, basically. Yeah. So let's see. And then we had the Doctor calling the Time Lords. So, someone pointed out to me to keep an eye out in the War Games for something that happens in the Doctor's wife. So immediately I went back to the Doctor's wife and I was like, what is it? I was looking through and I was like, I don't really see anything that could be a part of it. Not even thinking that in that episode, the Doctor basically gets a knock at the TARDIS door and there's just, this floating glowing cube, and it's basically just mail. It's a message from another Time Lord. Then he gets to the planet outside the universe and there's just a ton of them there because they have lured Time Lords and dismembered them and stuff. Yeah. So that is exactly that, the box that he sent out to call the Time Lords, which is interesting.
Intergalactic time portal email.
Yes. With a box. Yeah.
It's a T-mail.
It is a literal mail box. So that was very interesting to see that in this version. And then again, just the suspense building up to the Time Lords was very interesting. I mean, yes, it makes sense, the War Chief doesn't want the Time Lords here, but even still, just the sort of eeriness surrounding, the lead up to bring them here was very interesting. Because again, we don't really hear too much about them. It's just that, the Doctor, we're not sure where he's from, but even here, it's like, well, he ran away from the Time Lords, there's this advanced civilization and stuff, but it was just very eerie, and then, people start disappearing because they're being sent back to their own times and stuff. So, and even the Warlord saying, once the Time Lords get here, you'll wish you had killed him. So,
yeah, the Time Lords, kind of like Switzerland, trying to remain neutral, even in the face of the horrors of World War I and World War II, the Swiss remain neutral. Now, in their defense, that's, they're trying to be peaceful, they're trying not to get involved. But on the other hand, when you see atrocities being committed, especially like the ones in the Second World War, and you don't do anything to stop that, how much complicity is there? How much, is that on you for not helping to stop it?
Yeah. Well, and they say, too, that, the Time Lords very rarely hold a trial, but the only reason they have this trial for the Warlord is because the Doctor was there and brought it to the Time Lord's attention when he called. Otherwise, they would not have been... They would not have known about it, basically, until the War Chief starts taking over galaxies and stuff. So...
and by the way, this first Time Lord, Bernard Horsfall, that name sounds very familiar. I suspect he was in something earlier.
Yeah.
Was he the tall blonde one?
Might have been. I wonder... Oh, of course they don't have any pictures on any of them, so... Oh, yeah.
Bernard Horsfall. Let's see if he was in anything else.
Well, they never say what role they have. He was in The Day of the Doctor? I don't remember that. That'd be interesting.
Of course, he would have been much older.
Yeah. Nearly 50 years older at that point. Yeah. That's about it. So... Looking at cast members on Amazon itself is a little difficult, but... Yeah, I'd be curious. Some of them, they did look like Time Lords, like maybe... It would make sense to bring the three of them back, so... Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. But the whole thing of... Now, I guess, once we actually saw the Time Lords and stuff, sort of the eeriness and the scariness sort of died down, because it's like, okay, they're just this advanced civilization. It's just that they are going to do something to the Doctor and everyone. So, the whole thing of involvement. So, it's basically just, they're an advanced civilization, but they just observe. They just observe, they look, they learn, but that's it. Whereas the Doctor, which to be fair, this whole thing of the Doctor interfering, that's only sort of happened over the course of these 6 seasons, Like, yes, he left, as he said, he was bored and everything, and he wanted to explore the universe and stuff, but bigger incidents and interference didn't happen until after, Ian and Barbara stumbled onto the TARDIS, and then they went off, and then they just kept going, meeting species after species, Daleks, Cybermen, all that sort of stuff, and the Doctor just sort of had to get involved. Yeah. Which is also the thing, with the second Doctor. It was only that when the second Doctor finally said, there are evils in this universe that must be fought and stuff, and it's like, okay, so this Doctor has definitely taken more of a sort of heroic interference approach, but the first Doctor was still like, well, if I can, I won't interfere, but if I have to, I have to, basically.
Yeah, specifically remember, like, the Aztecs, when Barbara said, hey, I know what happens, and he goes, we can't change that. And then also with the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, where Stephen said, Doc, you have to prevent this, and he goes, I can't do that.
Yeah. It wasn't until... I feel like it wasn't until, like, the War Machines that he started to become a bit more active. Of course, that was, like his second to last episode, basically. Yeah. So yeah, the whole thing with the Doctor interfering, it's interesting just sort of looking back on that and thinking, well, yeah, the Doctor has been interfering, but a lot of the time with the first Doctor, it was by accident. Yeah. So, let's see. But yeah, I do like that despite the fact that we did go to Gallifrey, and this is the first time we've ever seen Gallifrey, they did not say it was Gallifrey. Yeah. So, it's just the world of the Time Lords, basically. So that was interesting. Let's see. We had the Warlords Trial, which you're right, that definitely felt like after, World War II, those sort of trials. So
yeah, and that whole thing, I don't recognize this court. You have no right to judge me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they do. You're committing not just crimes against humanity, but literally crimes against every species in the galaxy, and if you're given an opportunity in the universe, and you must be held accountable for that.
Yeah. And, I mean, so far in Doctor Who now, this is sort of the highest authority, is like, okay, well, these things, other than the Daleks, they're the only people that have mastered time travel, basically. Even the Daleks, while I guess the Daleks do have time travel, that's only because of their interactions with the Doctor, that they've managed to, they got that idea and it's like, hey, we need to start time traveling. But the Time Lords have already mastered it and everything. So right now, yeah, that is sort of the highest authority. There's no sort of, like, we don't know of any, like, galactic senate or something that would sort of be the more natural authority.
Yeah.
So the closest to an authority to judge the Warlord would be the Time Lords, basically. So, but yeah, but his whole trial was very interesting. And it was also interesting, those guards that show up. Those were like the most proactive guards that they somehow, like, I guess they just knew how to, pilot those Sidrats, basically. Somehow managed to get to Gallifrey and then, started killing some of the other Time Lords, or just, Gallifreyan maintenance, basically. Went in and broke the Warlord out. So, and it's also interesting, so presumably, they say that they took the secret of the TARDIS away from the Doctor, but we also saw those two, maintenance guys, messing with the TARDIS console. Presumably, they've also made sure that the TARDIS cannot travel anywhere.
Yeah.
So that still would not have worked out for the Warlord.
Now, to me, there is one, and it's not even a nagging little thought, and that is when the Warlord is ultimately condemned, he's dematerialized.
Yes.
Whereas it seems to me that a race who prides itself on just observing would simply lock him away.
Yeah.
And say, you will be, eternally locked in solitary confinement. Even if that drives you crazy, we don't really care. But to actually dematerialize them, to take them out of existence, seems a little contrary to their basic belief.
Yeah. Well, and also because they say they're locking away their home planet, too. They have an entire force field around the Warlord's home planet because they said, we don't want any of your species to ever get out again. Yeah. So, yeah, it is sort of interesting that I guess it's more of a, with the planet, it's like, well, we don't want to take a chance on your species getting out. We won't destroy them, but we will just, lock them away. Yeah. Whereas you have specifically committed these crimes, so the punishment is death, basically. Yeah. So it is a very brutal end for the Warlord, definitely. So let's see. We had the Doctor again trying to justify what he has done and the evils he had seen. I do like that, he started out small and then, gradually built up towards the Daleks. But it is also hilarious that he starts with the Quarks, which are not the most threatening. Like, I don't know, like, what other one-off villain he could have picked, but...
Well, the Dominators. I mean, why didn't he just go ahead and say, look, we had this group called the Dominators who had their Quarks, their killing machines. But, to start with the little... Hobbit-like robots, that seemed a little odd. But, obviously he was starting at the bottom and working his way up to the Daleks and the Cybermen.
Well, and then also, he says the Yeti, but the Yeti were controlled by the intelligence, so... But he didn't bring up the intelligence, he just said the Yeti.
But then again, he might be under the impression that the intelligence is not coming back. He fought it twice, and although the second time, Jamie disrupted the plan... He might have said, we saw the Yeti, we know that the Yeti there are still Yetis, even though they're not workable, on planet Earth. But he may be under the impression that the intelligence simply wasn't coming back.
Could be, yeah. So it was the Quarks, then the Yeti, then the Ice Warriors, which, I mean, so basically, other than the Quarks, each of those villains has had multiple episodes. The Quarks is the only one where it's like, all right, no, this was just one episode, and so that's the one they sort of go for the one-off, never coming back villain. Yeah. Then the Yeti, which had 2 episodes, the Ice Warriors, who have had 2 episodes by now, the Cybermen, who it's
3 or 4.
I think it's like 5 or 6 at this point, actually. Overall, I can't remember. Let's see, it was the 10th planet, then the moon base, then Tomb of the Cybermen, and then the Wheel in Space,
and then one more after that. Yeah,
the Invasion. Yeah, I think that was the last one. So that was 5, and then the Daleks. Well, I mean, the Daleks should be easy. There were only 2 Dalek serials for the second Doctor, so overall, the Daleks, the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the Chase, the Daleks Master Plan,
Power of the Daleks,
and then Evil of the Daleks, which is 6 overall. So yeah, that's a lot of episodes. That is a lot of episodes. So yeah, all the justifying though is interesting. I mean, in fairness, the Doctor kind of got a better trial than the Warlord. They were just going through. It's like, you did this, go away.
Well, because he wouldn't speak.
That's also true.
And again, that was, if I recall correctly, some of the defendants at Nuremberg did that. They basically said, I don't recognize the authority of this court. I am a German citizen or whatever, and you have no authority to put me on trial, and so they simply refused to speak.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is basically it, because they said, you need to speak in your defense, and the Doctor was fully prepared to, and he also understood the trial, and he knew that he could show them the images of what he has faced. But yeah, so let's see. And then Jamie and Zoe were sent home. Again, I mean, this has to be, one of those things. If you're a kid in 1969, the 2 companions are gone, you're probably crying, you're terrified of these Time Lords and stuff. Like, this is kind of an emotional episode, honestly.
Yeah.
So, but at the very least, I mean, I like that at the very least, they remember meeting the Doctor. They just don't remember leaving with the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because there are companions later on in modern Doctor Who where he has to, like, wipe their memory, or there was actually one time where his memory of them was wiped.
Now, regarding Jamie, at the end of the Highlanders, they were able to defeat the slave sellers, the slavers, I guess, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But I can't remember why Jamie decided to follow the Doctor back to the TARDIS and go with them. Because, again, they seem to be dropping him off before he met the Doctor in that last shot, because isn't that where the Doctor came in, and isn't that where the TARDIS landed? With him chasing off the red coat?
It might have been something like that. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure the reason. I don't remember if it was like he had lost his family or something like that. I don't fully remember why Jamie went with them. Or it may have been a thing like someone was after them, and so he just had to go on the TARDIS. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. But then, so he's sent back to Scotland. Zoe is sent back to the Wheel in Space. Let's see. The Doctor still has a part to play in the battle against evil, which I guess, so that means this is the first time the Time Lords are willing to be more involved, or at least send the Doctor to be more involved. So yes, he will live out a sentence on Earth in exile with a new face, new companions, no use of the TARDIS, no time travel, no space, no budget, nothing.
But good writers.
But good writers. There's at least that.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I'm certainly hoping the Monster of the Week format doesn't get old very quickly. I'm hoping that, again, Terrence Dix and some of the new writers can keep it interesting. But yeah, going into this is very much an uncertainty for us because we've seen a lot of, American science fiction Monster of the Week kind of stuff, and just after a while you go, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Which, I guess... So at the very least, we know when the Doctor will regain control of the TARDIS and he is free to explore time and space again. And we know that's the top of Season 10. And we're just about to start Season 7. So yes, we at least know that's 3 seasons of staying on Earth. But if I remember right, there will still be episodes where, because I think in Season 9 was when they went to Peladon. So I think it will be occasionally they can go through time or into space, but there'll have to be a specific reason for that now. And then but standard episodes are going to be just on Earth, I guess. So yeah.
Now, it wasn't Peladon, was it, where the guy took the Doctor and his companions, and we had the big, Jabba the Hutt burbling grape monsters or whatever they were. What was that? That wasn't Peladon, was it?
Jabba the Hutt grape monsters.
You remember we said these are the worst monsters ever because they look like these gigantic movable grapes, and then the whole unit seemed to have gone, and this is where, maybe this was one of the meetings, the 3 Doctors. That it?
I think that was the 3 Doctors where different things were being taken from Earth, and eventually the Doctors, plural, and all the companions were too.
Okay, so that wasn't a regular season episode sort of thing.
No, it was it kind of it is and it isn't. It's because it is still a 4-part serial, but it was the 10th anniversary special, and it was the top of it was the first episode of Season 10 specifically. So yeah, Peladon was where I think the Doctor was working on the TARDIS because he was trying to still fix it, and then for some reason or another, I think it was the Time Lords allowed him to go to Peladon to do something specific. So yeah, I think so. All right. So, I have every single thumbnail from our times with the Second Doctor. You can go ahead and that's full screen. Okay. So, we're going to give quick opinions on every single Second Doctor episode that we have watched.
Wow.
Which is what we did with the First Doctor when we finished that up. So, we're starting off with our classic episode that we didn't get any contrary comments about, The Power of the Daleks. So, quick thoughts. What did we think of Power of the Daleks?
I honestly didn't care for it. And again, it seemed to be a wasted opportunity.
There were some interesting things with the Daleks themselves. The fact that they weren't, just the normal front and center exterminate stuff. The fact that they were more, in the backgrounds, they were scheming and stuff and manipulating the humans that were there. That was kind of interesting, but everything else, the colony that made no sense, the resistance, and there was a rebellion, but I didn't get it, and everything. And the main sort of drawback is that it was the introduction to the Second Doctor, but introduced us to nothing about the Second Doctor.
Yeah, he was not just he wasn't mysterious. I think they thought they were making him mysterious, but we simply couldn't figure out what he was doing. There was no indication, no clue of where he was going. He just seemed to be a cipher, and that was very frustrating.
Yeah, it was just, and especially after the First Doctor didn't get a huge send-off, Yeah. There wasn't even, any sort of small speech at the end, which Hartnell was always great at.
Yeah.
he was always great at giving a good speech at the TARDIS console, but we didn't get any of that. He just, he goes in the TARDIS, he falls, regenerates, new face, and then we get this new guy who, yes, we had seen episodes of Troughton, but that made it even weirder because we were watching this and thinking, this isn't the Doctor we were used to in other episodes. Yeah. Which is a weird way to look at it, I will grant you, but still.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
That's the power of the Daleks. Next up was the Highlanders, our introduction to Jamie, who I'm pretty sure is the longest running companion.
Yes, because he did all 3 seasons, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. The Highlanders was a much better introduction.
Yes. The Doctor was cheeky. He was funny. He did all sorts of bizarre, funny stuff. When he was bamboozling the administrator or whatever he was there. Bringing up the whole slave trade thing with the Highlanders, and again, I thought it was a good script. And then again, remember, I like the historicals usually better than the rest of them. Yeah. I thought that was a good one. I like the Highlanders.
Yeah, so we did say, like, if you had started Troughton with the Highlanders,
yes,
that could have worked, and then that probably would have made Power of the Daleks a lot better. You start to know this Doctor already, and it's like, okay, yes, he's being... he's drawing himself in a bit more because he's, trying to be manipulative with everything and trying to figure out the Daleks, but you would have a better grasp on who this is, So...
I wonder why I did that.
I'm pretty sure it was it Austin Powers?
Yeah.
You did that, so... This is the fun part about going back to these episodes, is also looking at all the thumbnails that I've made over this.
Why were you hiding your face?
I'm not sure. I was doing something about that. I'm not sure. So right. Next up is the Underwater Menace.
Again, mad scientist out of a cheesy grade Z movie. And the plot made no sense. He was out to blow up the world. For what purpose?
He wanted to blow up the world because he could. Because he discovered that he could blow up the world, so he was going to do it.
Now, and again, that might have had something to do with some of the military people of that time, because there were a lot of people, I would imagine, both in the Soviet and American governments, who said, we have the capacity. United States generals might have said we have the capacity to reduce the Soviet Union to a smoldering radioactive stump. But we didn't do that because even in the 60s we understood that you cannot fight a war like that without poisoning the atmosphere of the planet. But still, again, this was a very, in my opinion, very bad script and not very redeemable.
Yeah.
Not believable.
Yeah, and the other thing about it, it had Atlantis. Like, that whole thing was like, oh, they found the lost, civilization of Atlantis, and here's this crazy, vaguely, mid-European guy who wants to blow up the world, and it's like, what? Yeah, you kind of had something with the whole Atlantis thing.
Went nowhere with the Atlantis thing.
Yeah.
All right.
Next up was the Moon Base, our unexpected Cyberman episode, too. But that was a good one, I remember. And the whole thing with, they were trying... Because the whole purpose of the Moon Base was to control the weather on Earth and stuff. So that one I remember was really good. And especially just because we weren't expecting it to be Cybermen, so when they, when there was a shadow and you could kind of see the outline, it's like, oh, okay, Cybermen, here we go.
Yeah. And we must have been discussing why the Cybermen had...
Yeah, they had
3 fingers instead of, phalanges.
Yeah, so...
Now, is this the one where they picked up Zoe or not?
No. That's the Wheel in
Wheel
Space.
in Space, all right.
This is still before Victoria, actually, so we still have Ben and Polly on this one.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Then we had the Macra Terror.
Interesting idea, people being controlled, but again, the giant crab seemed. I think I recall it seemed a little ludicrous. Bring in some boiling water and lemon wedges and have yourself a meal. again, I thought it was an interesting premise where they were literally, everything is awesome. I think we made that comparison to the Lego movie.
Yeah, everyone was unnaturally happy,
Yeah.
and as we see here in the thumbnail, the sort of big brother, face that would come on and tell them what to do. I think one part of it though was that I remember when they cut to, they would cut to this guy and it's like, oh, he's the supreme leader or whatever. But then they said, no, that's not the supreme leader. Cut to the real one, and it just cut to this old man who wasn't saying anything, and then they all heard, the crab start saying, it's like, say the line and stuff, and he was scared and stuff. It's like, this fell apart really fast.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this should have been a bit more, like, airtight for the macro. I don't know.
Again, good premise, kind of mucked up by a bad set of crab-like villains.
Yeah, it's just very strange. Next up is the Faceless Ones.
This was very interesting because we could not figure out where this one was going.
Yeah, this one was a mystery, definitely. So,
and the people disappearing on the planes and where was it going and yada yada yada, and it turns out there's a spaceship.
Yeah,
and they're slowly being replaced. The wrap up, the denouement, was kind of odd because the Doctor said, there are ways of fixing things back on your planet without having to take us. If I recall correctly, and then he didn't really kind of outline that.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it was our departure for Ben and Polly, although they were just kind of taken halfway through, and then they showed up at the end to say goodbye and stuff. And it was in that time of, what was it specifically? It was this, the War Machines, and then I think the next one is Evil of the Daleks, where it's like they all take place on the same day, which was kind of funny. And also just like a very interesting setting. It's like, okay, we're in an airport. Well, that sounds like one of the most boring Doctor Who settings, but they make it work, actually.
Yeah, somebody stole the TARDIS.
Yeah. They steal the TARDIS, and then they go around, and obviously Jamie being in an airport is hilarious, too. So, but definitely, like, even... I think it was, like, even to the last episode, we were sitting here like, I'm not really sure where we're going with this. So, it definitely kept us on our toes.
It must have been in winter because I'm wearing my sweater and I needed a haircut.
Yeah, must have been. So, next up is the Evil of the Daleks. This one, I felt, is what Power of the Daleks tried to be. Quite wasn't.
This was the steampunk version of the Daleks.
Yeah, it was a historical going back to Victorian times, and having the Daleks there, which was very interesting. And even for an episode that was, I think, heavy recon, still it was a very interesting idea.
There was that one storyline of the people who were very heavily in the first and second, or maybe second and third episodes, and then that storyline completely disappeared. Something about the guy who was the owner of the mansion or the ground or something like that. And then he suddenly disappeared and we never saw him again.
Something like that, I think. But then, yeah, there was something like that because they saw, like, oh, he has all these antiques, but they weren't old at all. Yeah. And that was because they were being brought back from the past through the Daleks' time machines. But then you go back to the past and the Daleks, they're trying... I don't remember what they were trying to do, but it was interesting. So,
and we thought the spunky maid would have made a better companion than Victoria.
Yeah. Next thumbnail on that one. And then there was also the whole thing of it wasn't Victoria's father, but whoever Victoria's father was working for, who, like, the reason he was working with the Daleks was because they promised him, like, the secret of alchemy.
Yeah.
And, for a little while, it's like, okay, yes, it's a bluff by the Daleks in order to get this guy to cooperate. But for a little while, you're like, oh, maybe the Daleks have figured it out. I'd be very curious about that.
Yeah.
So...
And the big thing, of course, at the end, we meet the Dalek Emperor, or whatever he was called.
Something like that.
And then the whole place explodes. One of the better... explosion type things, wrapping up the whole episode.
Yeah,
that we had ever seen up to that point.
Yeah, and it was pretty much sort of because that was back on Skaro as well, and they basically implied it's like, oh well, they won't be back for a while at least, which they haven't. We haven't had a Dalek episode since then. So yeah, I remember it was good. I just don't remember all the plot details of that one. Which, going through all of this is a huge test of our memories to really try to remember these episodes.
And you're talking about a guy who not only has short-term memory problems, but he has short-term memory problems.
Exactly. So,
right.
Next up is a rewatch of Tomb of the Cybermen, which was very, very interesting the second time around because we understood everything.
Yeah.
So, and we were able to, pick up more on things not only things just that were helpful in context, but also just things that we easily would have missed the first time around. Yeah. So yeah, that one I remember was really good. Although we were, it again was one of those things where, they want to revive the Cybermen to take over the world and then they will rule the Cybermen. It's like, this never works.
Humans never learn.
Yeah, you need to realize you cannot control these things. But still definitely, probably even better the second time around.
Yeah.
So.
And still must be in the wintertime freezing in your room because I'm wearing my sweater again.
Yeah, so it is not freezing right now.
No.
It is very hot, so.
Been in the 90s this week.
Yeah.
We still haven't had a day over 100 yet, though. This is one of the first times in many years where we've, here we are, first week of August. That's when we're filming. And no days over 100 yet here in central Oklahoma.
Next up is the Abominable Snowmen.
Men, not men. It's men.
Right. Abominable Snowmen, not Abominable Snowman. I wonder if the second thumbnail... No, I still didn't change that. This I remember actually, you can tell by this first thumbnail here, I had nothing to work with from that reaction. It's also interesting, so you're not wearing a sweater, yet I'm wearing my hoodie, so I'm not sure what happened there. So I guess I was cold that day and you weren't. But yeah, the fact that, I'm leaned back and it's just a picture of you laughing, it's like, clearly there wasn't a lot, because that was one of those episodes where it's like, we got nothing.
The monks, the warrior monks, interesting concept.
Yeah.
The fact that the Doctor had been there before, interesting concept. And then we got the remote-controlled Yetis and the great intelligence who had been there for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Again, kind of degenerated after that.
Yeah, and I remember, I think part of it, well, first off, I think it was almost completely in recons, which was a problem. But it was a slow burn episode, and the other problem was we kind of already knew the mystery, because we already knew the Yetis, we already knew that they were being controlled by the Great Intelligence. So it was one of those, because we watched it out of order, because we already knew it, that by the time the Doctor and everyone figured it out, we already knew, so it wasn't this grand revelation to us. So, the second thumbnail here for Abominable Snowmen is also another one of those where, clearly I found some picture of me doing something, but I found no picture of you, which is why your eyes are closed in that one. So, they're probably two of my laziest thumbnails. So
again, it started out with a good premise. I love the idea of the warrior monks. I thought it would have been great if there actually had been Yetis, real, not remote-controlled ones, but real Yetis, who might have been an actual sentient species, but they didn't go there.
Yeah. Although at the end, there were real Yetis. They just looked at, oh, look, a real Yeti, and then they just went off, and was like, oh, well.
And the professor's name was?
Travers.
Yeah.
Okay. That was it.
Kind of an interesting character, not so much a mad scientist as just an eccentric. Didn't we call him an eccentric anthropologist or something like that?
I think that he said in the newspapers he was called the mad anthropologist. Yeah. So, all right. Next up is the Ice Warriors.
Again, a good idea. The Ice Warriors had been embedded in the ice for thousands, if not millions of years.
Yeah.
Never did actually explain, if I recall, why they were here first. they had come down to reconnoiter the place and crashed or something like that. I don't know. But depending on how long ago it was, they would have preceded human civilization.
Right. Well, but that was the thing, too, was that we were in the far future, I think, where there was, like, a new ice age. And it was because of that, like, I guess before this ice age, the ice warriors crashed, and then the glaciers formed on top of them. But while they were very interesting, there was also the whole thing of I don't remember the main guy's name, but the whole thing of the guy who, he trusts the computer and stuff like that, and he doesn't trust experts and stuff, and there was all that sort of conflict there. And then obviously the Doctor arrives, and he's somewhat of an expert, and so that creates conflict. But overall, I mean, it was still a good episode. So this is obviously, this thumbnail here, the second one here, is obviously where I put more effort into it. So
we look like we're freezing.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember that one. I remember it was good, but I don't remember just sort of all the details about it.
Yeah.
So I do remember that was one, for some reason, that wasn't on BritBox, I think. So I had to buy the DVD for it. So.
Okay.
Next up is The Enemy of the World.
The Enemy of the World.
Yeah.
With the odd accent. But a great chance for Patrick Troughton to play two characters, himself and Salamander.
Yeah, definitely. And just sort of an interesting concept, it's the distant future of 2018, where this guy is sort of taken over the world. And then just, going through, and at first you think, like, okay, it's just sort of taking down Salamander and stuff. But then when it gets to, remember the underground civilization, and they've been causing these natural disasters and stuff, but he's been lying to them. They think there's there's no life on Earth and stuff. So it was something like that. And so, like, there were like 10 extra layers of confusion that kept getting added on, and then ending with a Troughton v. Troughton fight, which was fun. So, and in case any of you are looking at the second thumbnail and you're wondering what on earth it's saying, all I will say is it's a JoJo reference that nobody got. So,
I think one person got it.
There might have been one person, I think,
in the comments who got it.
Yeah, who understood my dumb JoJo reference, but no one else. If you're not watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's very bizarre, but go watch it and then watch my reactions to it. So, okay. Next up was rewatching the Web of Fear over 2 weeks, which was interesting. Yeah. Again, watching it more in context was definitely interesting, but also watching it not only in the context of the other episodes, but the context of the Abominable Snowmen was very interesting.
Yeah.
And obviously our introduction to the Brigadier once again, and honestly, just immediately it's like, man, the Brigadier is awesome, because he does, he takes everything into consideration. He doesn't just sort of, brush off the Doctor and the whole thing when he talks about aliens. Even if he doesn't fully believe, everything the Doctor's saying, he takes everything into consideration, which was really good.
Which sets him up for next season.
Yeah.
When he becomes a major character.
Yeah, definitely. So, the other interesting thing about that, though, was the fact that we did split that up over 2 weeks because it was 6 episodes. So rewatching the same episode over 2 weeks was just very interesting to do. Yeah. So,
and we still didn't figure out who the traitor was until the very end.
Yeah, we completely forgot how the episode progressed. After that was Fury from the Deep, the first instance of the sonic screwdriver.
All right, so this was the sentient seaweed.
Yes.
Again, I think we thought it was an interesting plot. It was well done, but the resolution, they never did say, where did the seaweed come from?
Yeah.
Why exactly was it doing what it was doing? Is it because the drilling was upsetting their habitat? And again, one or two characters who were just too over the top. the guy who said, I've been working on this rig for 30 years, I'm not going to listen to any of you experts.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. This is like the third or fourth time we've seen that in this same season.
Yeah, and especially, too, because I feel like they did it right in the Ice Warriors. Like, it worked out. Like, the guy, he was trying to get things done, and, yes, he overly relied on the computers, but occasionally he would listen to the doctor, and eventually he did come around to the other expert there. But I remember, I think it was Robson in Fury from the Deep. It was like, this guy is immediately angry, immediately, like, this is a person where, Captain Picard is going to be like, you're unfit for duty, get out of here.
Yeah.
So, and then, the seaweed, which I remember, I think there was a comment where someone was like, I wonder what the seaweed asked the director was their motivation and stuff. And it's like, I get that we're talking about sentient seaweed, but it's sentient. I want to know how.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to, look, if I'm going into the ocean, I don't want to, I don't want seaweed to come up to me and say, hey, what's going on? I want to know how this happened so I can be prepared for it or something.
Go get some sushi. And then this, of course, was the departure for Victoria, if I recall.
Yes, I believe so.
And we got the animated version of the helicopter flying amongst the seaweed tendrils, and the doctor saying he theoretically knew how to fly a loop-the-loop in a helicopter. Yeah,
which it is one of those things where that would have been really fun to see the real footage of, because this whole thing was animated. So, that was a very interesting, scene. It lasted a while too, but. I mean, if they had the budget for it, see, this is why they're exiling him to Earth. It's like, we don't have any more budgets for 5-minute helicopter scenes. Next up was The Wheel in Space, introducing us to Zoe, which was also a Cybermen episode, which was okay. It was sort of like... It was sort of like a comfortable, like, at this point, this was the fourth one. This was a comfortable fourth place for the Cybermen episodes. Like, it was a pretty standard, like, we're at this place, the Cybermen are here, we stop the Cybermen, all right, let's go, basically.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm trying to remember the specific plot. They were trying to control the wheel because...
I think because the wheel could destroy meteorites and stuff. Like, that was their whole purpose, was that they destroy meteorites so that they don't hit the Earth. So I guess the Cybermen were going to take the wheel to attack the Earth with it.
And they ended up destroying the Cybermen fleet?
Yes.
Something like that.
Something like that. I'm trying to remember it, but I'm starting to get it confused with, I think, the other Ice Warrior story, so I'm not sure. Yeah. After that was the Dominators.
All right. Now, again, this one, seriously, it needed a script editor who would come in and say, the Dominators themselves, the two humanoid men, very interesting dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah.
The Quarks, the dumbest thing that we have seen in 6 seasons. They are not in any way, shape, or form menacing.
They're very small.
They're, seriously, the size of hobbits.
Yeah.
And they have these really high kind of squeaky voices.
Yeah.
But these two guys, the actual Dominators.
Yeah, they were very interesting. And even, like, this whole planet where, they're the Dulcians, I think they were called, where I don't even remember, like, they were so passive. And, they were learning things, but they weren't asking questions. Yeah. Like, the whole thing was, on this island, the radiation was gone, finally. And they're like, well, now we know it takes 175 years for radiation to go away. And it's like, well, no, it just means the radiation's gone. It doesn't mean anything, So, and then, like, when it's like, oh, well, if we're going to do these things, we need to go talk to the director and the council and stuff. And they go to what I called the Council of Talking Men, where they didn't do anything except talked. And then, one of the Dominators comes in, they kill a couple of them. They still don't do anything.
Yeah.
And then the Doctor just blows them to Kingdom Come at the end.
Yes, that was kind of odd. That was the first time I thought he was supposed to be peaceful, but he put the bomb aboard their spaceship and blew them up. Because he had no other way to do it. But you can tell by the look on my face I was not impressed with the Quarks.
So.
But I really thought the two guys who played the Dominators themselves were very good. I thought the idea of that almost, I guess we can call it the Romulans, or Klingons, or these two guys were very militaristic. The underling always trying to find his way to make himself the overlord, and the other guy always putting him down. Interesting dynamic, but then ruined by the Quarks.
Yeah. So after that was the Mind Robber, the 5-parter we watched all in one go.
Which again, everybody seems to think this is great. And again, I understand the concept, but the characters that were chosen, Lemuel Gulliver and Rapunzel, it's just like there are so many other fictional characters that seems to me you could have played with here. So again, an interesting concept. I just didn't quite agree with its execution.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that yes, it is a mystery, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. Where is this place? And then you figure out, oh, it's some sort of like whatever it was, where there was this guy, basically like writing the script and stuff like that. And that was kind of interesting, but it wasn't. I feel like it was only like at the end where it was like I don't even remember specifically like what the fight was, but they kept like changing out fighters for like different people. So you had Lancelot, and you had Carcass, the comic book character. Yeah. So like some of that was kind of interesting, and I get budgets. You can't have 1,000 characters, but if you're gonna have a story like this, you kind of need 1,000 characters. So
or at least characters that are more recognizable. I realize that you can't get the rights to Superman or Batman or anything like that, but there have to be other fictional characters that could have been tossed in there.
Yeah, so a good idea, but probably best that we did watch it all in one go.
Yeah.
So after that was The Invasion, probably the best of the Cybermen episodes.
Yeah.
So
and the actor there who previously had played Mavic Chen, very good, very creepy, very subtle, knew everything he wanted to do. Only he raised his voice and got angry when the controller, whatever it was, the Cyberman controller said, "Hey, this is not the way it's supposed to go." And he goes, "I am in charge here. You will do as I say."
Yeah.
So again, I thought it was a good script. And especially loved his performance.
Yeah, and definitely like because it was also an episode with Unit, that was also very good. Just the dynamic between the Doctor and the Brigadier and all the Unit guys, and then and definitely who was it? Tobias Vaughn, I think was his name.
Yeah.
Definitely a better version, I think, of Mavic Chen.
Yeah.
Leave your hate in the comments. So, so yeah, definitely. And honestly, like when I think of this episode, I kind of think of everything but the Cybermen, which is interesting. But the Cybermen were also really good in this one.
Yeah, and they didn't show up, of course, until, third or fourth episode?
Yeah, it took a while for them to get in there.
And that's holding my nose is not something about the script. If I recall, didn't the Cybermen sound more like this?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
So, again, we have yet to, in my opinion, perfect the voice of the Cybermen.
Yeah. And I think this was also where they introduced using emotions on the Cybermen as well. So let's see what's next. The Crotons.
The Croutons. The Morons.
Which everyone... this is one of those where there were people in the comments that were like, yeah, this one's not amazing. And we were like, well, it's all right. It's...
again, an interesting concept. You have the two essentially robots, cyber, android, whatever, who have crashed. They need literally mental power to be able to get their craft back into space, but they've landed on a planet of relatively primitive people. They try to educate the people, but the people never come up to the level of intelligence that they need. So when the Doctor and Zoe are there, they try to do them. But again, you get the whirling jewel-like heads, which are very distracting. The fact that it didn't have legs, it had a skirt because they couldn't complete the costume, apparently.
Yeah.
And again, an interesting concept, the idea of advanced civilizations taking advantage of primitive civilizations. In this case, not specifically for their resources, but for their, where they're literally harvesting their intelligence, harvesting their people to try to, get to their own ends. Interesting concept, very poorly executed.
Yeah. So after that is the Seeds of Death.
All right, the return of the gigantic pickle men.
Yeah.
The Ice Warriors. Again, I think our only real problem with this was the foam, which, they called it a fungus, but it wasn't a fungus. I mean, why didn't they just call it a foam,
Yeah.
We're going to spread the foam across the earth and it will, deplete the earth of its oxygen and so forth. Whatever. But again, a relatively decent story.
Yeah. You can also tell in this thumbnail. It was another one of those where I didn't really have much, so those two images of us are not the greatest. I think I might have been in a rush to do this thumbnail. I don't know why. But
again, especially, again, considering how bad I thought the Cybermen's vocals were, I loved the Ice Warriors. The fact that they had that sibilant S, which, of course, human beings have this innate fear of snakes, literally from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And I just, it's very creepy. It works very well. The fact that their leader was not the big, bulky, wide-hipped warrior from before.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff going on in this one.
Yeah. And even, like, all the side characters I remember were really, really good.
Yeah.
And especially, like, everyone that was on the moon base, and there was the one guy, Phipps, who was, who actually, like, took out a couple of the Ice Warriors, too. So,
and then Fushim, who, was the bad guy turned good guy in the end, sacrificing himself, basically, to save everyone else.
Basically. So definitely a good one there. I think I know what's next, is the Space Pirates.
I was kind of... Now, I know a lot of people in the First Doctor didn't care for the smugglers. I thought it was interesting. I was kind of hoping this would be that. It's not that.
Yeah. Which I think... So, I think the interesting thing is we said that... Again, premise, interesting. Execution, not that great. But apparently that's still a more positive outlook on the Space Pirates than most of the fandom. They don't even like the premise of it. So yeah. And then the second thumbnail. I had fun with that thumbnail. So yeah, I mean, it was one of those, well, first off, it was almost completely recons, and it was the last recon, and we were watching it over the span of 2 days. We were exhausted, and it wasn't a great script. It was ridiculous characters, and it just wasn't great.
Yeah.
But the fact that we still have the most positive outlook on this story among Doctor Who fans, it's frightening almost. Yeah. So yeah. Then, of course, we come to today with the War Games. Which, I mean, I don't know if I can speak for you on this, but probably best Troughton episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
But here's the thing. Interesting premise, executed very well, gave you enough information to keep us going, wait a minute, where's this going? Oh, wait a minute, I think I know where it's going, and then it doesn't, and it goes off in different directions and so forth. Good characterizations, especially the other Time Lord there.
Yeah, the War Chief. Well, and also, too, like you said, 10 episodes, not a moment wasted.
Yeah.
Which is the first time that's ever really happened, because we've had, longer episodes, but they just don't quite work.
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the greatest things about this is that we knew two things going into this. The Time Lords were going to show up, and it was going to be the regeneration of the Second Doctor. And yet still, that didn't take a single thing away from our enjoyment of it. Because, I mean, yes, the Time Lords, obviously, they show up later. The most you get is the War Chief being a Time Lord. And even, the regeneration is not really brought up until the end with the trial of the Doctor. But even still, you cannot guess where this is going. It's just one thing after another. Even at the beginning, when you kind of think like, okay, so there's some alien stuff going on in World War I. No. World War I has been brought to aliens, as well as like 30 other wars and stuff. So,
and I'm really, the only thing, again, I'm kind of sorry they didn't bring in the Romans. We ended up with some British soldiers, some American Civil War soldiers, Union and Confederate. We saw some, the Crimean War and Boer War. And then the Mexican Banditos. But seriously, bring in some Romans. Bring in, the leader of the Legionnaires or whoever. And just really mix it up. Have some fun with that. But again, not that I miss them. It's just that when you introduce them, when you ended that first episode or the second episode with the Romans charging them, it's like, wow, let's see some more of that. Hey, how are the Romans going to deal with World War I armaments? Things like that.
Well, and also too because we mainly focused on the 1917 zone and then the American Civil War zone, and when we weren't there, we were at the control, control center. It is one of those things where you set up like 30 different wars. I would kind of like to go to all of those different wars and see how everyone deals with all of those.
Just a minute or two of each one.
Yeah. That said, that's just an observation. That is not a critique on the episode at all.
I would have to say, this and Marco Polo. Probably, and again, we saw Marco Polo completely in recons, which was sad, but even in recons, you could tell what a brilliant script that was.
Yeah.
All right. So I'd say, Doctor Who occasionally reached levels of brilliance. Most of the time it was good. There are some clinkers in there, but, there are in every science fiction thing. And the thing about science fiction is you have to keep the audience's interest.
Yeah.
You can't make it so obvious that people go, oh, I know where this is going, and they tune out. It has to be like this, where you think you know where it's going, and then it twists and turns. You go, okay, I'll follow it down that path. And you said, all right, I know it's going here, and then it goes off there, and you go, okay, I'll follow you there now. And by the end of it, you're going, wait a minute, I'm remembering where this started, and now it's gone completely different, but where it has gone to is a place that's better than where we started it. So.
Yeah, definitely. And just the fact that, when you start off like, okay, they're in World War I. Oh, okay, that could be a very interesting script. And it is technically a historical, the kind of, a sci-fi historical technically. You at least have a lot of historical people in there. But then to go through all of that and then for it to just start to change, where it's not the normal, well, this was a very, difficult situation for the Doctor, but he's managed to figure everything out. But the fact that then transforms into, okay, something's wrong. Something's about to happen. This isn't going to go the way it always goes. When they start to bring in the Time Lords in this one, where, the War Chief is terrified. Even the Doctor is kind of unsure about this, but he knows he has to. And then just immediately it's like, all right, I've called the Time Lords. I have to get as far away from here as possible.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't work. Just that chase until eventually the Time Lords do capture him, forcing him to regenerate. It was honestly the only terrifying moment that we've had in 6 seasons, where it's like, it's basically where in all these 6 seasons, the Doctor has always found a way out. He's always stayed measured, maybe he gets angry every so often, but that's about it. But this moment where there is nothing he can do whatsoever, and he just has to accept it. And even then he really can't, but he knows eventually they're going to catch up to him and he won't be able to run. Just the tone shift with these last two was very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the entirety. That probably took us about a half hour or so to go through all of those episodes, but that is the entirety of the Troughton era. So yeah, you got anything else?
Well, I was just going to say I'm starting back to school next week. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday we have faculty meetings. I have students next Thursday. So perhaps next week my voice will be very, very strained because I will be literally talking all day long for the first time since, May 19th or 20th?
Yeah.
So be prepared. And we start a new Doctor.
Yeah. So I guess there is sort of the question that I'm sure will come up in the comments. Which era do you prefer? The first Doctor or the second Doctor?
That is very hard. I almost cannot make the distinction because William Hartnell is my Doctor.
Yeah.
Again, had a lot of really good scripts for him, had a lot of real stinkers. But as far as the Doctor, that's who I always see. Here's this, cranky old man who's, occasionally charming and occasionally eccentric, but the guy who basically he's, again, observing where he can, only intervenes when, there's an existential threat like the Daleks or the Cybermen or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of his were historicals, and that's the reason I got hooked on it. Watching the Crusades, going back to the Aztecs, the French Revolution, just all of that. That's just William Hartnell will always be my Doctor. I enjoyed Patrick Troughton. A lot of his episodes were way better than stuff in the first 3 seasons, but William Hartnell is the Doctor.
Yeah.
That's why he's in the center. He is the Doctor.
That's true. That is true. He is the Doctor. He is the first Doctor. No one bring up the Timeless Child. We'll move on from that. Anyway.
I haven't seen the Timeless Child yet, so I don't know.
I am indifferent to it. But anyway.
All right.
I would say it's... I find it difficult because I've talked about this with people on Twitter, which, first off, it's difficult for me to rank the modern Doctors, like which one is better than which. And so it's kind of difficult to do that here between the two of them. But the other thing is their eras are so different too. Whereas I feel like with the first Doctor, that was a show where, every other week you go see some aliens or you go see some history. Whereas this felt like Doctor Who, where there's these crazy aliens all over the place. There's this crazy time travel stuff. There's a million different things happening. So to try to compare it, I do feel like is very difficult.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what everyone wants me to do. So I almost feel like in terms of maybe consistency and like consistent episodes and stuff, I might lean a bit more towards the second Doctor because it was really a shot in the dark on what you would get with the first Doctor. Sometimes, because you can't even like say, well, it would be just the historicals, because there would be some like St. Bartholomew's Eve comes to mind where it's like that one, it was very slow and had one of the most depressing endings we've ever had, but it had a little bit of something interesting there, especially at the end with the Doctor thinking of, returning to Gallifrey and stuff like that. Whereas this one, I do feel like there was more consistency with what they were doing. I almost feel like there maybe was more consistency with the Doctor himself. Maybe because, this Doctor took a more, forefront approach. He was more at the center of things. He was more of the hero, whereas the first Doctor wasn't. So if I'm asked which one is closer, I think, to Doctor Who, it would probably be the second Doctor. But there was still a lot of really good stuff in the first Doctor. I also want to say maybe some of the recon episodes were better with the first Doctor too. Like I know, like I can remember some of them and be like, okay, well that wasn't good. Celestial Toymaker wasn't good and stuff. But then you get other episodes and it's like, oh well, that one was really good. That one was good, and it's like, oh okay, so I can kind of. Whereas Troughton, it's like if it's a recon, probably not, unless it's like Evil of the Daleks. I think was a really good one despite being recon. So it's one of those things. It's hard to compare, but I maybe might lean a bit more towards the second Doctor. So, but yeah. And now, as I say that those two eras are very different, we're about to enter the third era, which is also very different. A very different show format. Yeah. So, yeah, I I'm not entirely sure what we're in for. Like, I have an idea, and I don't have an idea at the same time. So, all I know is that anytime, like, in modern Doctor Who, when, like, politics or something is brought up, and there'll be people that are like, oh, don't bring politics into Doctor Who, pretty much everyone references the Third Doctor. Whereas, like, a lot of, like, contemporary stuff, because he is, in the 70s, is brought up with the Third Doctor. So,
and the 70s were a real contentious time in Great Britain and around the world at that time. So, I mean, that would make more sense. If he's exiled on Earth for 3 or 4 years, he's going to have to deal with things that are going on then. We can't be so oblique about them, like, the drilling in the North Sea, or, the some of this other stuff where it's an analogy of what was going on in the world. The exploitation of indigenous peoples or their resources, that sort of stuff. He's going to be stuck in England, at a time of great social upheaval. So
right. So it'll be very interesting to see how the show with the pepper pots with plungers deals with the issues of yesterday's today, basically. Put that on a t-shirt. There's a quote for you. So
with all that,
despite the fact that this was 2 less episodes, I think this is only 15 minutes shorter than last episode. So, whoops, we just kept talking. So, yes, next week we will start the Third Doctor with whatever the next episode is called. I don't remember. So yeah. Hey, no more recons.
Yay.
And color.
And that'll be interesting, seeing it in color for a change.
Yeah, so no more of the black and white stuff, and I'm going to have to redo all the thumbnails and stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to have to redo how I make these thumbnails again, so that'll be fun to figure out. And I'm sure we will still have dumb thumbnails like the one Space Pirates one, where I just kept putting in different images of the Stonks guy. And with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to rewatch all of our Second Doctor reactions, well, it's all in the Doctor Who Classic playlist. There's also a modern Doctor Who playlist if you want to go click on that. There's a subscribe button and a Patreon button on the screen as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.